Today we study the exposition, the detailed exposition of the first jhana, and it begins on page 142. So far the yogi has prepared and then practiced until he got the access concentration. And with the gaining of access concentration, he got the counterpart sign in his mind. That is, the mental image of the kasina disc appeared in his mind. And he dwells upon it again and again, or he concentrates upon that mental image, so that when the time is right, there arises in him a thought process containing the jhana consciousness. So while he is guiding his mind in this way, confronting the sign, that means dwelling on the counterpart sign again and again, then knowing now absorption will succeed. Now this is a place where most translators misunderstood the Pali idiom. The Pali idiom here means just when absorption is about to arise. And so we do not need the words in square brackets, then knowing, because the subject of this sentence is the mind door adverting, and not the person. And also the person does not know when the absorption will arise. And so this is the Pali idiom, which means just when absorption is about to arise. So literally translated, it should be when it could be said that absorption will succeed or absorption will arise. So when absorption or jhana is about to arise, what happens is the mind-adverting arises, cutting off the flow of life continuum or bhavanga. And please look at the sheet today, at the bottom of the sheet, the jhana thought process. Actually, I've given the diagrams of thought processes before. Now, if you look at the first line, the first two are BH, they are bhavangas. And then M is mind door adverting. So when the absorption is about to arise, there arises in his mind first mind door adverting. And after that, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 moments of impulsion or javana. And the first 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, belong to kama vajara, sense sphere consciousness. And number 5 belongs to rupa vajara, fine material sphere. So number 1, 2, 3, and 4 are actually the types of consciousness which we call beautiful sense sphere consciousness. If you remember the chart.
I have it upstairs. So
yeah, it's okay. So then the first is called you may look at the book too. The number 1 is called preliminary work, and then number 2 is called access. Number 3 is called conformity, and number 4 change of lineage. Now, the commentary explains that all 1, 2, 3, 4 can be called by each of these names: preliminary work, access, conformity, and the all four can be called by these names, preliminary work, access, and conformity. Or if we want to give them separate names so that one excludes the other, then number one is to be called preliminary work, number two, access, number three, conformity, and number four, change of lineage. And it is at the fourth moment that the Kamavajra lineage stops, and then number five becomes Rupavajra, five material lineage. So that is why it is called change of lineage. And the second diagram shows another variety of the thought process. But here you do not have preliminary work. So there are only three Kamavajra javanas or impulsions, and the fourth is jhana, the Rupavajra. So in this there are only three Kamavajra javanas, number 1, 2, and 3, and one Rupavajra javana, which is 4. So either the jhana arises either at the fifth moment or at the fourth moment. Now here we do not have the normal duration of 7 javanas. Mostly javanas repeat themselves 7 times under normal conditions. But in this thought process, there are only 5 or 4 javana moments.
What is javana?
Impulsion it is the in the thought process. There are 7 in normal thought process. There are 7 movements of impulsion, or we call javana, and it is these are the moments when the object is really experienced, and they are the moments where karma is acquired, either good karma or bad karma. So the commentary explains all these in paragraph 74, 75, yes, and the paragraph 76, also 77, etc. Gave another view of the elder Godada, who said there can be 6th and the 7th moments of javana. So there can be 7 javanas, or there can be 6 javanas, and that opinion is refuted by Buddha Ghosa, the author of this book. Because if the javana were to go until 6 or 7, it would not be able to stop as jhana. And the analogy is given as when a person runs fast towards the precipice, he would not be able to stop there because he has gained momentum, and so he would not be able to stop there because in javanas one supports the other, and so they become more and more powerful. But at the 4th or 5th, the consciousness, the flow of consciousness, Kamavajra consciousness can stop, and then the jhana consciousness arises. So the common opinion of teachers is that jhana arises at the 5th or at the 4th moment, and not at the 6th or 7th, or not before the 5th, or in another case 4th. So that there must be at least 4 Kamavajra moments or 3 Kamavajra moments preceding jhana thought moment. So this is how a jhana thought process arises. And in this book it is called cognitive series. That is what we are saying, the thought process. So we call thought process, and the Jnanamoli calls cognitive series. They are the same. In Pali it is called viti, V-I-T-H-I. Now, when describing first jhana, Buddha used something like a stereotyped expression, and the commentary gave detailed exposition of that text, and the translation of that text to make meaning more clear, I gave on the sheet. It is different from what you will see or what you have seen in this path of purification, but they mean the same thing. So the passage runs like this: quite secluded from karmas, secluded from akusalas, he enters upon and dwells in the first jhana, which is accompanied by vitakka and vichara, and which is born of seclusion or arises in secluded state, and which is with piti and sukha. This is the description of the first jhana. Now, and I put the numbers 1 and 2 so that we can understand more clearly. Now, the first phrase states, quite secluded from karmas, and the second, secluded from akusalas. Now, the commentary explains that the word quite is to be understood in two also, because in the Pali usage, they do not repeat a word again and again, but let it be understood in later expressions. So here also, although it is not said that quite secluded from karmas and quite secluded from akusalas, we must understand that the quite is meant here also. And quite the word quite here means that means something like not otherwise, definiteness here. So your mind must be secluded from karmas and not otherwise in order to get jhana. So without seclusion from karmas, there can be no attainment of jhanas. And also the same thing, without seclusion from akusala, there can be no attainment of jhana. So the word quite should be understood in number two phrase also. And he enters upon and dwells in the first jhana, which is accompanied by vitakka and vichara. Vitakka and vichara are the jhana factors, or they are mental factors. We call them initial application and sustained application. So that's why you need a certain knowledge of Abhidhamma to understand this. So the first jhana is accompanied by vitakka and vichara, initial application and sustained application. And the first jhana is born of seclusion. So we will come to seclusion later. Or the first jhana arises in secluded states. That means arises together with secluded states. And this first jhana is with piti and sukha. Piti is translated as joy and sukha as happiness. So I think you remember the difference between piti and sukha, or it is explained in Visuddhimagga, in the path of purification. Now, the word karma is important here. If you look a little further down, the word karma can mean objects of sense desire or sense desires themselves. So, whenever we find the word karma, we have to understand what it means. Sometimes it may mean just the objects of sense desire. Sometimes it may mean sense desire. Or sometimes it may mean both. So here, the word karma can mean A or B. The objects of sense desire or sense desires themselves. Now, if I am attached to this cup, then this is the object of my sense desire. So sense desire is in me, and this is the object. So this object is called karma. And the desire arising in my mind is also called karma. So karma can mean the thing. which we are attached to, or the consciousness, or the not really consciousness, the attachment which we have. So when we take the word karma to mean objects of sense desire, then the number one phrase shows that we must be secluded from these sense objects, desirable sense objects which we can be attached to. That means we should be practicing not in the middle of the city where there are many attractions. So we should be in a secluded place, in the forest or somewhere where there are no such attractive objects. So the number one phrase shows that we must be secluded bodily. In that case, number two phrase, quite secluded from akusala, means we must be secluded from sense desires and all akusala. That means akusalas including sense desire. Because sense desire is lobha, and so it is included in akusala. So this is when we take karma to mean objects of sense desire. If we take karma to mean just sense desires, then number one shows seclusion from sense desires. Here, number one shows we must be secluded from sense desires. We must not have sense desires arise in our minds. And number two shows seclusion from sense desires and all akusala. Because when we say secluded from karma, we mean secluded from lobha. And secluded from akusala mean all akusala, including lobha. So we should understand these two clearly in this way.
What is lobha?
Lobha. Lobha means attachment.
Attachment is greed.
Greed or attachment. Attachment. So this is the gist of what the commentary of what the path of purification explains in these passages.
And akusala means unwholesome.
Right, yes. Yeah. So, in order to get jhana, one must be secluded from sense objects and sense desires, and also be secluded from akusala, especially the hindrances, what we call hindrances. There are 5 hindrances mentioned later in the book. Because if our minds are not free from sense desire and other hindrances, then concentration cannot arise. And when there is no concentration, there can be no attainment of jhana. So in order to get jhana, at least this first jhana, then our mind should be away from the sense desires and sense objects, and also from the mental hindrances. The sense desire comes again here, and then anger, sloth and fervor, and then restlessness and remorse and doubt. So these are the 5 hindrances. They are mentioned later. So, and in the translation, what is meant by sense desires as object? Sense desires as objects. Are objects sense desires? I think that is not accurate. So what? Suppose this is sense object. This is the object of sense. So this is not sense desire. It is the object of sense desire. So I think we should not say object, sense desires as object. If you want to say sense desires object, or object of sense desire, I think it should be like that.
sense desires object would lead one to look at sense desires, not look at desire, not at objects.
So when we say object of sense desire, what do you understand by that?
That would be rupa, right?
Yeah, rupas or they can be rupa or nama also.
So the T could be object of sense desire.
One?
So the T could be the object.
The T could be the object of sense desire. Yes, anything can be the object of sense desire. But sense desire is the subject arising in our mind, and the objects are something out of our minds and even in our minds, but they could be not the same thing at the same moment. You know, we are attached to our thoughts too. Then the thought is mine. That thought is the object of our sense desire.
Aren't dharmas objects too? Like dharmas are objects of our senses, consciousness?
What?
Dharmas, are you talking about everything? They classify everything as dharmas, and I thought dharmas were objects. They're not a dharma.
Everything, in the world can be the object. You know, there are 6 senses in Abhidhamma. The eye, the ear, and so on. So the visible object is the object of the eye or seeing consciousness, and so on. And then the other objects are the objects of mind. So instead of saying objects or sense desires as object, I think we should say object of sense desires. And sense desires as defilement. That's correct.
Which paragraph?
But you know, we have the word sense desires object in paragraph 83, the second line. I think that is correct. Sense desires object. And the apostrophe after sense desires apostrophe, it is not the quote.
Oh. It's the beginning one. Should press that.
So there is confusion here in the type also. Okay, and then about the middle of the page, we find the word sense desire element.
Page 145?
Yes, sense desire element. It actually means the realm of sense desire. We have come across this word in the past. Although it is translated as element, what is meant is the realm of sense desire. That means kama vajra realm. Sometimes translators want to be very literal. So the word dhatu is used. And the word dhatu, dhatu, the word dhatu is normally translated as element. So there are four great elements like earth element, water element, fire element, and wind element. So they are called elements because the word used in Pali is dhatu. And here also the word dhatu is used, but in a different sense. Not in the sense that they are essential parts of something. But here, kama dhatu simply means the realm of kama. That means kama vajra world, kama vajra realm. So that covers some pages here. Now let's go to page 147, the last paragraph. So far the factors abandoned by the first jhana, we need the word first here. So far the factors abandoned by the first jhana have been shown. And now in order to show the factors associated with it, which is accompanied by applied and sustained thought, etc., is said. So etc. is missing there. So now we come to the familiar grounds. Initial application, or here the applied thought and sustained thought. That means initial application and sustained application. Or in Pali, vitakka and vichara. They are two mental factors. And then the commentary explains one by one the initial application and sustained application, and then the difference between initial application and sustained application, because they arise at the same time with the same type of consciousness, but they have different functions, and so they are different. So the paragraph 89, and those sometimes not separate. That means though they arise together with some types of consciousness. Initial application or applied thought and sustained thought arise together with many types of consciousness. Actually, 55 kinds of consciousness, they arise together. But in the second jhana, there is no applied thought or initial application. And the same with third, fourth and fifth. So, those sometimes not separate means, though they, with some types of consciousness, they arise together. Applied thought is one thing, and sustained thought is another. And then he gives the author gives the analogies of the difference between vitakka and vichara. And I think I have told you about this difference when we study Abhidhamma here. I wonder, you remember that? Yeah, about the middle of paragraph 89.
Some of us don't remember and some of them aren't here. So.
Yeah, that's right. Many are not, well, not at the class. So, like a bird spreading out its wings when about to soar into the air, and like a bee diving towards a lotus when it is minded to follow up the scent of it. The behavior of sustained thought is quiet, being the near non-interference of consciousness, like the birds flaming with outspread wings after soaring into the air, and like the bees buzzing above the lotus after it has dived towards it. So initial application is going to the thing first, and then sustained application is staying on it or something like that. And there are other analogies too.
How can they arise together? It seems like they would arise in sequence.
They arise together and they have different functions. The initial application is the one that takes the mind to the object, and sustained application is the one that keeps the mind there.
But wouldn't the initial application arise first and then sustained application?
They arise together. Initial application is not an exact translation of the word, because there is a word initial, and so we might think that vitakka comes first and then vichara follows. But vitakka means just thinking or thought, and vichara means what to call going here and there. That is vichara. So they are together, but they have different functions. And then there is the word which is translated here as born of seclusion, and there are two meanings to this word in Pali. Born of seclusion, or arises in secluded states. That means arises with secluded states. Secluded states really mean the jhana consciousness and other mental factors. And seclusion here means disappearance of hindrances. So long as there are hindrances, there can be no seclusion or there can be no arising of jhana consciousness. So born of seclusion means the disappearance of or the absence of mental hindrances. And then it is with, the jhana is with piti and sukha, with joy and happiness. But here, piti is translated as happiness and sukha as bliss. And the commentary gave 5 kinds of piti here. And this kind of piti, the meditators experience during their practice of meditation. And there are said to be 5 kinds of such happiness or joy or zest or whatever you may call it. And there are 5 kinds of minor piti, momentary piti, showering piti, uplifting piti, and pervading piti. And minor piti is only able to raise the hairs on the body. Sometimes you have this hair standing on end. So that may cause from just cold or it is caused by piti in the mind. And momentary piti is a little stronger than minor piti, like flashes of lightning at different moments. Sometimes you feel that thing when you practice meditation. And the next is showering piti, breaks over the body again and again like waves on the seashore. It is like the wave, it comes over the body and then subsides and then again comes and subsides and so on. That is showering piti. And then the 4th one is uplifting piti. So when you have this kind of piti, your body can be levitated. And the 2 stories are given here, in which 2 persons levitated or flew through the air, not by the power of jhana or supernormal knowledge, but by the power of this piti. So these stories are not difficult to understand. One is of a monk, and the other is of a girl who was left behind because she was pregnant, and then she was very desirous of going to the Pagoda festival, and so she got the piti from thinking of the people going around the pagoda and then about the Buddha and so on. And so she got this piti and she was lifted up and transported to the Pagoda festival. And she reached there before her parents reached the place. So that was by the power of uplifting piti. And the last one is pervading piti. The whole body is completely pervaded, like a filled bladder, like a rock cavern invaded by a huge inundation, or like something like a surgical cotton put in the water, something like that. It is soaked, totally soaked in water, something like that. So your whole body is soaked in this kind of happiness. Not, I would translate sukha as happiness. Piti is difficult to translate. Rapture. And when the commentary gives the difference between piti and sukha, the next one. And piti and sukha also arise at the same time with some types of consciousness. Although they arise together, in this case too, there is difference. Because piti is not feeling, according to Abhidhamma. Piti belongs to formation aggregate, and happiness or sukha belongs to feeling aggregate. So they are different. Sukha is feeling, vedana, but piti is not vedana, but it is something like preceding sukha, although they arise at the same time. And piti is compared to that of a man exhausted in the desert saw or heard about a pond on the edge of a wood. That is piti. And if he went to the wood's shade and used the water, he would have bliss, sukha. So piti and sukha are something like that. That is why piti is also translated as pleasurable interest. So when you heard or see a pond, when you are going on a journey and you are tired, and when you heard that there is a pond over there, or when you see the pond, you have a kind of joy or something like that. And when you really reach the pond and make use of water and so on, then you have this real experience of that thing. So one is like an interest in that thing, and the other is a real experience of it. But they arise together. Now, there is an alternate translation of the passage there, and that is, which is accompanied by Vidyaka and Vichara, and which is with piti and sukha, which are born of seclusion. Now, the word born of seclusion can qualify the jhana, or it can qualify piti and sukha. Although it is not so important whichever way we take, but we have to understand this. So born of seclusion qualifies jhana in the first translation. So it is jhana which is born of seclusion. But in the alternative translation, it is piti and sukha which are born of seclusion. They mean the same thing. Because piti and sukha are constituents of jhana. Do you remember the five factors of jhana? Vitaka, vichara, piti, sukha, and the last one, one-pointedness. So these are the 5 jhana factors. So the word piti, sukha in Pali, or the vivekajam piti sukha in Pali is interpreted in 2 ways. And so in the first way, it is the jhana which is born of seclusion and which is accompanied by piti and sukha. In the alternate interpretation, it is piti and sukha which are born of seclusion, and it is jhana which is accompanied by that piti and that sukha. So if piti and sukha are born of seclusion, then the jhana is also born of seclusion, because piti and sukha are part of jhana. And then first jhana, this will be explained below. Enters upon, arrives and reaches is what is meant, or else taking it as mixed enter. Actually, the Pali word upasampadiyedva means something like having accomplished. The literal meaning is having approached, something like that. And then the word dwell is explained in paragraph 103. So by becoming possessed of jhana of the kind described above, through dwelling in a posture favorable to that jhana, he produces a procedure, a keeping, an enduring, a lasting, a behavior, a dwelling of the person. Of the person really means of the body. Now, the first jhana abandons 5 factors and possesses 5 factors. So 5 factors are abandoned by first jhana, and it possesses 5 factors. So the 5 factors abandoned are the 5 mental hindrances. Here it is stated as lust, ill will, stiffness and torpor, agitation and worry, and uncertainty. They are the 5 mental hindrances. For no jhana arises until these have been abandoned. So there can be no jhana when there are these 5 mental hindrances.
What does stiffness mean?
Actually, it is sleepiness. It is a translation of the word Bali word thina, but it is not really stiffness. It is inability of the mind to be awake, to be alert. So we just say sleepiness. So sloth, it is translated as sloth and torpor in other books. And in paragraph 105, second line, not become concentrated on an object consisting in unity. Real means the single object. Because if you have to get jhana, your mind has to be on one and the same object, single object. So object consisting in unity simply means one object, or single essence of the object which is the single essence. That just means the single object or one object. And here also we have the word sense desire element. So it should be understood as meaning sense desire, realm of sense desires, kama, vajara, lobha. Now, what are the 5 factors possessed by first jhana? These are the 5 factors we met in Abhidhamma. Initial application, sustained application, piti, sukha. That's right. But in the passage here, ekagata is not mentioned. No.
Because it's on the Krishna.
Yeah, but we must understand that ekagata is also a factor of the first jhana. Not only the first jhana, of all jhanas. So that is stated here. So, although one-pointedness of mind is not mentioned in the passage, we should understand that the one-pointedness is one of the factors of jhana, or the constituent of jhana.
What says unification of mind?
Yeah, that's right. That is what is meant here. So he translated as unification of mind. And what we call jhana is simply